What did you all come up with? How do we reduce fear? How do we understand people that are different than us, different color, so that we're not fearful and that we can really practice racial empathy? Who from the group would like to answer that?
And please just unmute yourselves and speak up.
I think we probably, that fear, it's not going to go away unless we talk about it. Unless we just have the courage to say, I don't understand where you're coming from, or to say something, right. And get some kind of a conversation started. Because otherwise, I think we're just going to be sitting there stewing in our own juice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in what way, Gail? Well,
how's it going to get better? Really, it could be anything. If we don't talk about it, we're afraid to talk about it because we're afraid of the confrontation that may occur. Somebody may start throwing rocks at us. They don't like what we have to say. They're yelling at us. We don't know what's going to happen as a result of beginning to talk about this. Mm-hmm. And so, when in doubt, do nothing. But then it will never get better.
Right, that's the violence of silence.
Yes.
Good. Yep.
And so, as we were saying in our group, listening is so important, and being able to listen, and again the humility, and come in with what I've just learned from this great book that I'm reading about how all of us have racist tendencies. All of us have things that we don't understand about what's happened to the Black people or the people of color. We've lived in a proverbial cave. We've lived in that way of not knowing what's going on. So
I'd like to add from our group, one of the things that was mentioned was that many people don't seem to be paying much attention these days. They just don't. And it's a problem. And one of the people in our group mentioned that in the United States, we often don't even teach civics today. Mm-hmm. So what is civics? It's government. It's learning about how the government works. And so many of our people today have no idea. Like the other day, I heard somebody who's just been elected to the United States Senate, of all things. And he was talking about the 3 branches of government. Do you know what he said? He said, the House and the Senate and the President. Mm-hmm. and for our Chinese students, they, in the Constitution, which is the supreme law of our country, the 3 branches of government are the President, the Congress, and the courts, something that the law students will be interested in. But those are the 3 branches of government. And it was a United States senator that said this.
That was one of their questions, by the way, Fred, was about that. Even though we talked about it in the last 2 weeks, they did have a follow-up on that as far as how that's structured again.
Yeah, it's how, and also, I know there was a question also about the state government and how, and let me just briefly mention that. In the United States, we have a federal government, a national government, and we also have a state government. And at one point in my life, for about 15 years, I was a member of the state legislature in Oregon, which is like the state Congress. And in the states are responsible for like highways, school system, for many of our health laws and environment laws and a number of things like that. And so and then also the states have a taxation system. And then at the federal level, they also have courts, and they have a Congress, as I said, and a president as the chief executive. While in the states, you have a governor and you don't have a president. But that's the difference between our systems. And they're pretty much the state systems are the same pretty much in all 50 states.
Can I make a couple comments? I don't know if we're talking those two things now. One of the things I taught, and I taught government, I taught history. I taught that the use of the word state in the United States is a totally inaccurate use of the word state. We are not states. A state is a sovereign place, and we're not sovereign. It was a misconception that was based on the pre-Constitution United States, when we were sovereign states, each of us. That's one. And the second one, Fred, is I refer to 4 branches of government because I consider both the House and the Senate to be, in effect, having to approve of law and further before it can become law. It gives you a better picture of what's really happening. Just a thought.
Thank you.
John, and I agree with you. In my teaching, one of the most difficult things for students to understand is when I use the term state, I'm talking about a sovereign nation or a country.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get very confused when they see 50 states.
Can I add that a little bit to that? I also think we use the word nation very inappropriately in the United States too, because a nation state is a European concept because there was such a thing as a nationality. None of them were actually totally nation states, but there were always minorities there. But the French had a French state, and the Germans had lately had a German state very late. And we've never really had an American state unless you consider that an American is, and this really fits into this discussion very well, I think, an American is anybody who lives in America. It can be a Black person, it can be a German American, it can be a Indian American, instance of a Native American. But there is no American nationality. It doesn't exist in the United States.
And Chinese American.
And Chinese American, excuse me.
Greg, the students had some questions, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And I can see that the virtual field trip has begun. And I'm not sure how many are here yet. I was just kind of double tasking there with in WeChat helping.
We have about 41 here already.
Okay, so there's about half of them here. There are some of them, they're all coming from different classes. You can see they're in a classroom, some of them are. Let me start off, let me just say to the students, we were just wrapping up a discussion about racism and fear and how in America, we oftentimes, fear tends to rule our thinking and our relationships with people that are different than us, especially people that are of a different color, racially different. And so that's what we were finishing up discussing is how do we reduce fear and how do we come together? But I want to have the students hear something, a little bit of research I was doing, and I think it's also good for the group. And it's this. I don't know if you know this or not, but the racial diversity of America is flowing up by age category from our youth. It's the next generation that is going to be much different, historically different than America's ever been. And it is happening faster than projected by census scholars. It's going to be the Gen Z and the Alpha generation, Gen Alpha, that are going to be the majority of them, and I'm talking 16 and younger today, over 60% are non-white. That's close to voting age too. And let me just quickly there's a chart for you. In the last decade, the white population in America, in almost in every state, so it's pretty uniform, has actually declined. And we added about 19 million new people in the last decade. And the majority of those are Latino, Hispanic, Asian American, Black, people that claim 2 or more races, and then American Indian, Alaskan Native. It is, we had predicted this, but it's happening much faster than we thought. And so the white population is shrinking, and our nation's racial and ethnic minorities are growing faster than projected. And it is Latino and Hispanic, Asian American, Black populations grew by rates of 20%, 29%, and 8.5% respectively. And the relatively small population of residents identifying as 2 or more races grew by a healthy 30%. And then you had Native Americans that grew by 7.6%. For most of these groups, natural increase was the primary contributor, meaning that they were not immigrants, but the category that had the largest net immigration growth, 74%, was the Asian American growth, people coming in from the outside. Okay. So our work here is not only looking backwards at all the racial history and reconciliation that has to occur and truth seeking, but it's also about looking forward because it's coming at us really fast. And it's good news because America is going to become even more diverse and multi-hued, multicultural than ever before with the data that we're seeing. And the 2020 census should prove out this bottom-up change that we're seeing and the pace of it. So it's cool, but we've got a lot of work to do to prepare this ethnically rich and diverse country that's coming at us to make sure that we have equity and equality, which are 2 different terms. Interesting fact, and I just thought I'd share that with you all and also the students, and then let's get to their questions. Unless anybody has a question on those facts.
I just wanted to make a statement. I think that graph is emblematic of why there's so much fear on behalf of the Trump voters, because their fear of what will happen to them when they become the minority. And, you know, and we've got to get rid of the idea of majority minority. It's going to be the majority, period. And the majority are going to be Black and brown people. But I think that graph is really the reason why there has been so much fear stirred up amongst the folks who identify as white.
And I think another thing that the sooner that we can eliminate the electoral college and base the vote on the popular vote and get away from this red and blue state stuff is going to be very helpful in terms of unifying the country.
Yeah. Good. I really like what Becky said there. I think she's right on. And I'm glad I brought that little factoid into the discussion because I was just, as part of my research I've been doing, and I just was like, wow, this is nice. This is really cool. And it's excellent for our visitors from China to hear because
Greg,
yes.
John has a quick comment.
John.
I was just following up on Jackie's comment. I think that's the source in very recent history. That's the source of so much of the voter suppression efforts we're seeing now is that fear of white population becoming, you just want to get away from the term majority minority, but the white population becoming a minority. I think from their point of view, that is a huge fear, and that's, I think, a major source of voter suppression efforts.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Very good. Anybody else have any questions on the little?
Bobby?
Bobby has a question.
Bobby.
Not just a question, but a comment. One of my favorite TikToks is someone saying, well, you know, in the United States, white people are going to be a minority. And the other person saying, oh, why is that a problem? don't you treat your minorities, kind of like, oh, so you're afraid to be a minority. Is that because how you treat minorities? That kind of thing. And it sticks with me.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you. All right, I'd like to get to some questions, and I want to see let's see, let's start with Mary. Mary, I saw you there somewhere. Can you come off? Oh, there you are. You're right in the middle. Good morning, Mary.
Hi,
Hello,
Mary.
Professor. Hello.
Hello, Mary.
Welcome to the group. You had a question you wanted to ask the group.
Yeah, Professor. We know that in today's world, with the rapid development, the competition is becoming more and more fierce. However, the construction of community with a shared future for mankind is the general trend and the aspiration of the people. I want to know that what is the attitude of America towards building it? Or what position do you think the America should be in it, or what kind of role should it play? Yeah, that's my question.
This is a wonderful question, and I'm going to repeat it so that way people can really sit with it for a minute. But what Mary's asking is that Chinese, know that in today's world, there's rapid development, there's competition that is becoming more and more fierce in the world. However, the construction of a community with a shared future for mankind is the general trend and the aspiration of the people. I want to know, what is the attitude of America towards building it? What position do you think the America should be in it, or what kind of role should it play? Excellent question, Mary. Thank you.
Wonderful question.
They hear from me all the time, y'all. You've got to answer this question.
Yeah, please pop in with an answer. John?
Well, I think that the general attitude in the United States, and very well expressed by President Trump, has been it's a zero-sum game. And if you get it, it gets taken away from us. And I'm speaking us as the whole American population. And so it's not a zero-sum game, of course. That's a truism, but I don't know how to get past that mentality.
Hey, John, can you describe for them what zero-sum game means? That's a concept I'm not sure they would understand.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what zero-sum means is there's a fixed pot of wealth, and we have a large share. Everybody knows that. If you get more of share, that decreases the amount available to us because it's not a growing pot of wealth. Is that good enough?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, anyone else?
I think that the competition between the United States and China is a fact of life, but I don't think it has to be a war of life. I think it can be something that enhances both countries. We watched a documentary sometime a couple of years ago about the remarkable gains that we made in China in terms of economic development. And it was inspiring. And I think we can work together. I think our agriculture community, I think our industrial community, and I think the same is true in China, that you have things for sale, we have things for sale, and we can work. I think we can work together, and I think it's important, and it's in our interest to do so.
And because we have a world economy and a world ecology, if we don't all work on this together, we're all going to sink together.
That's right.
That's my world ecology point of view.
Absolutely.
But we need each other.
Bobby?
I believe that there are some issues where we can compete in a healthy and both sides win. I think there are other things that we need to really understand what kind of a small, fragile planet we have. And so when we're talking about global warming, when we're talking about a pandemic, when we're talking about some things, medicine, people that are hungry, a few people having all the wealth and a lot of people going without. I think there are things that we can come together with and work together. So I think it doesn't have to be just one thing. I think that in the world we can do many things at once.
I remember when I was my first year of teaching, I was teaching in high school and I had 14-year-old freshmen and I taught world geography. And when we came to the section on China, and this is 1963, we knew absolutely nothing about China. The borders were closed. We didn't have any kind of understanding what China was about. And we essentially said there was poverty and there were mountains, and that was about all we knew. And I think one of the things that's happened in the last decades, and as you folks have lived your lives so far, we've opened our societies much more. We know much more about each other, and I think it's much healthier. And we also know that if China got into trouble in terms of like a flood or a bad hurricanes or something, or the United States did, I hope we'll be in a position where we can turn to each other and ask for help. And I hope that we never, ever again teach in our classrooms that you're poor and you have mountains. I think there's much, much more to what China is all about.
Neil.
I think that we're talking about presidents of the United States and a political situation, but from what Father Fred just said, it was reinforced by Nixon, who opened China. Before that was the closed border. But in 1972, or Nixon's legacy, besides Watergate, is that he opened China, and it's progressed ever since then, and to the point that we are right now, and everything you buy at Walmart particularly has made in China on it. And that's a significant change from the 70s to the 60s.
Well, it's that country's opening up, and that's what propelled them in a lot of ways to be the #2 superpower, economic superpower in the world. And so, yeah. Mary.
I just wanted to comment on the opening up. I really have a problem when we talk from an American perspective, like we are the superior. The Chinese culture was around way before we came along, and the development of that culture, it was far beyond what Europeans were. And so to talk about, can we rephrase it? We opened ourselves up to China. They didn't open up. So that bothers me. And so I just wanted to say that it's their culture, it has more depth and knowledge. We're just learning the Chinese way of medicine, which is helping to inform our way of medicine. There's so much we can learn. And so I hope we can get away from us being the superior, because we're not.
Yeah.
Jackie, I hear what you're saying, and I get that. And I know Fred and Greg last week, we talked about, they explained how the vast millennium that China has been around and has given this world so much. And I remember when President Nixon sent, and his plane landed in Beijing that day. And it was huge, because to me, when I think about that it was President Nixon that opened China, it was like exactly what you're saying. It was we were opening ourselves to China. So yes, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad you raised that point because it's an important one. So and I don't see it as a, but then that's a good lesson for me because I see it as the gifts they can give us.
Yeah, and it's not a superiority thing. And actually inside the country of China and in their 5-year plans and stuff, they do refer to it because that's where they opened up to a more capitalist society. And that is what drove their enormous growth. And they have great plans to continue with the One Belt, One Road initiative. So, of course, it's not a huge monkey wrench. They will, internally in the country, they do refer to it in their plans and in their documents about opening up. That's a big strategy of their success. So we will open up to it as well, to bring them in because we need each other. But internally, that was a strategy inside of China. Let's go to the next question. Sherry, are you there?
I'm here, Professor.
You got a question for us.
Good evening, professors. I want to know what's the attitudes of American people toward family? Because in China, the family is an essential part of one's life, but most American people are independent. So I would like to know the family value of American people.
What a great question.
Great question. Yes.
Thank you, Sherry. Who would like? I see Connie smiling. Connie, do you want to answer this question for Sherry? If you do, unmute yourself.
I think there are so many different kinds of families in America. And my observation is that some families have great heritage and value a lot. Some families, though, are fractured and have sadness and there's their own divisiveness. Some of our families are healing from hurt or abuse in their family. And some of our families are so safe and they bring everyone with them. So it's hard to talk about families in the US because there's so many kinds of families. The ones that I get to see in the classroom at the community college, I see ones who have long heritage and lots of connections. And I see some where they're there by themselves. They're the first one to step out and they're almost all alone coming in. I see families where there's single parents and children and they're doing wonderfully. I see families where there are two parents and extended families and they're very fractured and very, I have pain. So if I can talk about my family, I have two amazing children that I got to adopt and they're now in their 30s and I have amazing grandchildren and I feel really blessed. And I have other families that we share a lot of holidays with, not this year, but in the past, share a lot of holidays with. We bring families together. And my observation is what is true here, and I think is true in your country, is when you love somebody unconditionally, you love them unconditionally. And that's whether it's a family or a friend. I do think it's important in many families in the US, they're over the past 10, 15 years with the internet, tracking their family trees. So some could care less about a family tree and some are really interested in a family tree. My observation is families are allowed to be small, allowed to be very large in the US. And so as I learned about China and have friends that I got to know and learn more about, that wide range of family also is most likely different. Hopefully I answered some of your questions.
Thank you, Connie.
Very good, Connie. Who else would like to share on family? It's a great question.
My obstetrician family is personal experience, but I've seen it in very many. My brother, for example, we are such a mobile society. It's very difficult to keep our families geographically close to us forever. So it kind of gives the impression that family is not as central in our lives as it is if we were all in the same community still. And I wonder if that doesn't give maybe a misimpression that family is not as significant in American culture.
One unique thing to think about with China too is that they've had the one-child policy for years. A lot of people have no siblings, and then of course now it's two-child. It's back to two-child. They, by policy, have restrictions on the size of families.
Janice?
But I would add to that, even though we don't have a two-child policy, I think it still is true that even in the large American population, our typical family size is about 1.7 children per family. Is it still that? 1.7, 1.8? Most of our growth in the United States comes from immigration, not from natural birth rate.
Right. And as we on chart, the Asian American growth came from immigration over the last 9.5 years. Whereas the rest of it, of the minority growth, was from natural.
Oh, okay.
All right. William, are you there? Mr. William.
Oh.
Can I add to that? Is William here?
William?
I was going to add to that comment.
I'll see if I can find anyone.
And that is, I think one of the fears in the white, getting back to the white concept, one of the fears of the white community, and you hear it expressed sometimes, is, oh, we're becoming a minority. We need to have more children so we can, I know, Jackie, we don't like the term minority, majority. I'm speaking numerically now. The one way we can keep our numerical advantage would be through having more children. And you hear that. Jack Kemp was a great exponent of that. But,
any other comments on this before we have to wrap it up? Our time is going away, unfortunately.
I wanted to say the question that I think it was Sherry asked about family, because we are a multi ethnic country, depending on the culture or the family that you grow up in, it's so different. Whereas in China, everyone pretty much is Chinese by ethnicity. In our country, it depends. I wish that in my family, we had the privilege of being able to have grown up with the value of taking care of one another, supported from the way that, the American rugged individualist is what America espoused. And so people tended to leave home to become an individual. And that was promoted more than staying together and supporting one another and helping one another and helping to develop wealth and developing ourselves as humans. In America, the rugged individualist is what has driven us so far apart. It's not just by culture. It's like in the water that we drink, that you want to get out and move on and take on your life rather than be a part of a family and a part of the collective.
Very good. I'm going to give Neil the final word.
I just want to remind everybody, including me, that the slogan of the United States or America has been the melting pot of the world, but somehow we are stumbling to achieve that in equality. We have lots of people, but we're not melded very well together into one.
And I think that melting pot was when a lot of immigration and mixed relationships and marriages and things. What I've been telling my students for the last probably 10 years, 15, is that America was a melting pot, but it's actually now more like a salad bowl. Unique races and ethnicities and differences, and we all are together. And so, and we have to learn to live together peacefully and and
I-
prosperity.
I'd like to, as we conclude this evening, mention that next week in the United States is Thanksgiving, which is one of our oldest American holidays, and dating back to the time of the Pilgrims. And so we observe Thanksgiving next week, and we will not have a conversation since it is a week from tonight. And we will resume our conversations on December the 3rd. We'll have a guest speaker, she's Latinx, and we'll have a whole different perspective for us to listen to her comments and to learn from her. We'll have one more session following that on December 10th for our fall conversations, and then we'll be taking a break until January 7th, and we'll be back then to resume for the winter. So we have two more sessions on December 3rd and 10th, and then we'll be taking the holiday break. So everyone have a wonderful week. Thank you so much to our Chinese students, our law students from that we've enjoyed getting to know you, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for on occasion during our winter session. So I know your professor will be talking to you about that. So thank you so much, everyone, for this session.
Thank you, students. Thank you, students.
Thank you
And
very
thank
much.
you, everyone, so much for your feedback tonight.
Well, it was a great discussion, great discussion. And the students, you're always welcome to come in here, whether you have an invitation or not, as long as the session's going on and you have that connected with you also. And also, one other thing to the students logistically is I will see you in about 25 minutes in the other Zoom room, and we'll go over yesterday's exam, prepping you for tomorrow's first exam.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye, you guys.
Bye.
You're awesome. I'm so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Bye-bye.